This is the second video in a series on getting the most out of the archaic DNA matches on GEDmatch. In this one, we combine GEDmatch with free AI tools to turn those ancient matches into a video explainer and a personal podcast in which experts discuss your GEDmatch results. The first video was an overview of what is so fascinating about your connection to these DNA specimens. In this video, I'll show you how to use my spreadsheet tool, free ChatGPT, and the free Google AI learning tool, NotebookLM, to make a video and podcast that places you and your archaic matches within the vast timeline of human development and migration. You'll be most interested in your results, but I'll give you a teaser on mine.
Margaret, we've been looking at your results from the archaic DNA matches tool.
There's the personalization. These are just snippets of a 7-minute video. And then there's a much deeper dive of a 20-minute audio podcast. And you can make that a 40-minute podcast if you so choose. These are the 5 steps we will follow in this video. If you've already uploaded your DNA to GEDmatch, you can speed through that section. But stick with me, even if you're familiar with the archaic DNA matches. I'm going to show you how to use my spreadsheet tool to work with these ancient specimens. A spreadsheet will help us to use free ChatGPT to research a specific set of matches. We'll then upload the results of our research to NotebookLM, and we'll use NotebookLM to generate a personalized audio podcast and explainer video of your match comparisons. First, you need to copy your DNA over to GEDmatch. To upload your DNA to GEDmatch, I've got a separate video that goes through that. I'll link in the description below. Scroll down on the GEDmatch page, and here's the free tools section. The one that you want, archaic DNA matches. Click on that. On this page, choose your kit. Next, you want to choose your upper segment threshold limit. The most useful approach is to find the highest centimorgan at which you get a smattering of matches. For example, let's say I choose 6 centimorgan as my threshold and I hit match with ancient DNA. So it tells me I have no matching segments, try a lower threshold. So I just go back. I have to choose the kit number again. It does clear it out. I go down to 5, click match. The fact that I see a display here means I have at least one match. This is a heat map from chromosome 1 to 22, and I've got no colours here at all, which means I've got no matches to these kits on the left. By the way, this is a bit blurry. I will show you in a minute how to make this a bit clearer to look at, but I'll just scroll down and I can see the solitary little colour here, this orange bar to a particular match from Russia. Then I scroll down again and I'm seeing nothing. I've only got the one match. So go back. So Margaret here talking as editor. I'm going to fast forward as I work my way down the different centimorgans till I get to the sweet spot where I have some matches, but not so many that the centimorgans are so low that I'm matching nearly everything. For me, 2 centimorgan is the sweet spot where I have a smattering of matches. That's because I have half European ancestry. If both your parents have European heritage, you can probably set your bar a bit higher. How many have I got? A little bit difficult to count because this display over here on the left is so difficult to see. This is a generated image. I'll give you my tip now for seeing this more clearly. Right click and I am going to choose Open Image in New Tab. Now I'm going to zoom in. So on my laptop, I'm going to hit Control plus, go right in. That's at 300%. I'll go in one more, and that's now readable. Let's take a look at what knowledge we can glean from just the names of the kits. First of all, don't worry too much about the first part of each name. That is simply the kit number on GEDmatch. It's the next part, the descriptive part, that is important. So if I'm looking at this line here, we've got 3 specimens here. The first one here is called Rathlin 1. The next is where it was found, Ireland. And then you've got the time period. KY, kilo years, 1000. And then you've got BC. Now you may be wondering what BP is, or BCE is. I could Google each of these terms, or I can get a more holistic answer from ChatGPT. I've logged into free ChatGPT here, and now I'm going to use the first prompt of this tutorial. You can just type in the prompt as you see it on the screen, but I've also collected all the prompts into a PDF available for download. Just follow the link in the description below. You get that PDF with the prompts. You also get my spreadsheet, which you can use in Excel, Google Sheets, or another spreadsheet application of your choice. This is page 1 of the PDF. My first prompt, I'll just pull it off screen here and type it in. You can copy and paste it from the PDF. I'm using GEDmatch and looking at archaic DNA matches. In the descriptions of the archaic DNA kits, I see abbreviations of CAL-BC, CAL-BCE, and CAL-BP. What do these descriptions mean? Submit that. So we've got years before Christ, years before Common Era. It's the same thing. So BCE is the more modern, non-religious abbreviation. And it's this BP, years before present, that I wasn't sure of at all. And present is 1950, the date when radiocarbon dating was standardized. Now, if you do have two kits and one of them is in Cal BP and one of them is in Cal BCE, and you want to know how many years between them, you can come to ChatGPT here, give both descriptions, and ask it to calculate the number of years, tell you which one is older, whatever you need in terms of conversion. So having done some research on definitions, let's get on with the tutorial. What we want to do is to give ChatGPT the list of your matches with their descriptions and then guide it through doing some research for us. It's a real pain in the neck that GEDmatch provide this list as an image, so you can't just copy and paste. I've got a shortcut for you. I've prepared a spreadsheet with all the kits. It's in the download pack I mentioned earlier. There's a link in the description below. It's optional, but it will save you time. I've opened the spreadsheet and I have the exact kit details on the first tab. But I advise you to use the second tab, which excludes the kit number from the description. I find the AI tools do better with just the archaeological sample name and details. So let me show you an example of quickly working through my matches. I will speed this up. So here's my list. I'm scrolling my eye down, and the first match I have lit up here is Rathlin 1, Ireland. I'll pull over my spreadsheet, run my eye down here. I'm on the 2 centimorgan level here, and here's Rathlin, and I'm going to put an X into the cell for Rathlin. And then the next match is 1, 2, 3 down, and then I have a match at 3, 4, and 5. Back into my spreadsheet, so I'm 1, 2, 3 down, and I have a match there, and a match there, because I have 3 matches in a row. You see, this can be pretty quick, right? Down to ESP24 in Germany here, and then I have to go down again. Then scroll over to the right, and that is it. So those are my matches at 2 centimorgan and above. If I now put a filter, I'll just go to that top row there, expand and put a filter, and now only select X. Now I have my list of its 21 matches. As it happens, at this level of centimorgan, I don't have a match to Neanderthal remains. Depending on your background, if you have 2 parents who are both of European heritage, you may well have. Because so many people are interested in that, and that might be your interest, I'm going to drop my threshold down by 1, run the comparison again, and see if I match Neanderthal kits. So let me take this filter off and show them all, and you see that like right at the top there's a couple of Neanderthal remains here that I'm just not matching to. So I go back to the selector, and that was at 2 centimorgan. I'll bring it down to 1 centimorgan, and I'll hit match with ancient DNA. And you see that I just get far more matches, far more bars. Right click, open image in new tab, go into the 400%. I'm scrolling my eye down. I'm not going to take all these extra matches. There's too many to be interesting to me. I'd rather work with that smaller number at the higher centimorgan range. But I do want to grab any Neanderthal matches, and I'm just scrolling my eye down. Neanderthal, no, not matching. Keep scrolling. And here, this one, which unfortunately in terms of the display doesn't clearly say Neanderthal, but that is Altai Neanderthal. That is a pretty famous set of remains. Both those two together, the Altai Neanderthal and the Denisova remains, they're found in caves quite close to each other in Siberia. So I have small segment matches on both those segments. Then if I scroll down, I think that's it for me. Yeah. I'm going to put an X beside these two. And it is in the 1 centimorgan area. Where are they? They're quite down here. Down here. X and X. So now I'm going back into ChatGPT for this part of the tutorial, which is to use ChatGPT for my research. First thing I'm going to do in ChatGPT is to create a new project. I'm not going to do anything special. I just want to create a new project so it doesn't overuse memories of my previous sessions with it. I want to do this fresh, so it's more likely to be what you're also seeing. So you don't have to do this. Name the project GEDmatch archaic DNA matches. I'll hit create project, and then I'm not going to do anything else. I'm not going to create custom instructions, upload files. I just want this project. And now I'll just close the sidebar to give myself a nice big area. And now I'm going to give it my prompt. Now this prompt is available in my download pack. It's in the pack is prompt number 2. It is relatively long, a little bit complex. You will be making your own changes to it, but I'm going to work through it step by step. So I'm just going to bring it down to a second screen, and I'm going to type in the first piece of the prompt. Assign your AI tool a role or a persona. Tell it what it's an expert in. Usually I tell the tool, you're an expert genealogist. You are an expert, and I just have to spell this properly, archaeogeneticist. Don't worry if you're not familiar with the term. It's a new field, only a few decades old, that grew with the discovery of these ancient DNA remains and the ability to sequence the DNA. Archaeogenetics is basically the combination of these 4 fields: genetics, archaeology, anthropology, and population biology. And the great thing for us is that we don't need to be experts in it. We're telling the AI tool that it is an archaeogeneticist. If you want to know more about archaeogenetics, ask ChatGPT. But I'll complete the sentence by giving ChatGPT more context. You're an expert archaeogeneticist who studies ancient DNA to understand the history of past populations, human evolution, and migration patterns. The reason I'm focusing on those 3 aspects is because archaeogenetics includes archaeology. I wanted to focus more on the genetics, population biology, and anthropology side. So let's continue to tell ChatGPT what it does. You categorize events into these broad evolutionary periods. I'm going to copy the list from my prompt, and you'll probably recognize a lot of this. We've got Paleolithic, we've got Mesolithic, the Neolithic, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age. Copy this from my prompt pack, paste it here. So I'll drop down a line. You categorize historical DNA into these categories. It's a bit of a tautology, but it'll do. Just pull up my prompt and I'll copy 3 categories. Put these in here and then I'll do some explanation. Early hominins. That includes a species like Homo erectus, which is not the same as Homo sapiens. These are early bipedal, 2 legs creatures that appeared before the appearance of Neanderthals and indeed Homo sapiens. Next are archaic humans, and that includes Neanderthals, Denisovans, which early research thought that those remains of the Denisovans were Neanderthal, but found them to be a separate species, and the early Homo sapiens. This is the first emergence of ourselves. The third category, modern humans, which is also Homo sapiens, but we have the full development of language, symbols, art, and sophisticated tool use. Okay, so that's been a lot of general context. Now I'm going to give it specific context on what I've done. I used the archaic DNA matches tool on the GEDmatch website to compare my DNA for segments larger than, and now you need to put in what your filter was based on. Remember, my first filter was based on 2 centimorgan. Below is a list where I had at least 1 segment match. So back to my spreadsheet where I'd put an X against the DNA matches. In the 2 centimorgan column, I'm going to put a filter onto entries with an X and not a blank. So I'll click OK. And here is 21 kits that I matched at 2 centimorgan. I'm going to copy this, Control C, and I am going to toggle over to ChatGPT. Put my cursor here, and now I'm going to right click, and because I'm bringing it over from a spreadsheet, I'm going to not choose paste, I'm going to choose paste as plain text. If you choose paste, ChatGPT will treat it as a spreadsheet that you're uploading, and if you're on the free version, that'll go against your credits and you'll run out of resources faster. So just choose paste as plain text and it copies it straight in here. It wasn't all, because for me, and maybe not for you, but for me, my 2 centimorgan doesn't include the Neanderthal matches. I had to drop down to 1 centimorgan to get both the Neanderthal match and another archaic DNA match. Just give myself a new line here. What I'll do, just to save a bit of typing, I'll scroll up and I will Control C just these 2 sentences here. We'll come back down, Control V, and I'll change that 2 centimorgan to 1 centimorgan. Bring this down a line, back into my spreadsheet. I'll remove the filter on here by hitting Select All. And now on the 1 centimorgan, I'm going to add a filter here, purely on the X, and there are my 2 matches. So I'll copy those and I'll paste, right click, paste as plain text, and there's those 2. So finally, I've given it all the context that I want to give it, and now I have to give it a task. Having given all that information, I have to tell it what I want it to do. I don't want to ask it to do too much of one prompt because it gets confused. My first task, if I come down a couple of lines here, is your first task is to categorize my matches into the broad time periods. Do not provide additional commentary. Right, that's it. That's the full prompt, and click submit. Thinking longer for a better answer? I'm going to speed this up a lot. It does take a minute. So that is complete. It's telling me I have nothing in the lower Paleolithic and middle Paleolithic. My matches start the upper Paleolithic. It's the Mesolithic. Most I have are lying in the Neolithic, a couple from the Bronze Age, and then the Iron Age. Now that I've got my matches sorted into these periods, I'm going to get ChatGPT to do some analysis. Go back to my prompt pack. I'm into prompt number 3 here, and I'm going to copy and paste this prompt. And I'll just walk through it. For some of these DNA matches, consider the associated information on region and time. I'm referring here to the fact that we get a region, for example, El Mirador Cave in Spain, and we get a time period, 5,000 years. We provide a brief description of, and now I'm telling it the 4 areas I'd like some insight into. Population movements or migrations in the region and time. Major archaeological or historical events in this region and time. Tools and technologies typical of this region and time. And the typical lifestyle and subsistence strategy of people in this region and time. So what I'm looking for, let's say subsistence strategy, I'm looking for whether these particular time periods were hunter-gatherer or farming. So now I'm going to choose 1 DNA match from each of the time periods, which means I'm going to list 5 matches here. You may be wondering why I just don't tell it to do them all. Well, I did in an earlier trial, and ChatGPT told me it couldn't do them all, that was too many, and it picked 4. And they might have been the ones I would have picked. So now I'm going to direct it. And I want 1 from the Upper Paleolithic, and I'll take Ust-Ishim, because I'll cover the Neanderthals in more depth in another video. From the Mesolithic, I'll just take the oldest one, found in Georgia. From Neolithic, again, I will take the oldest specimen. Bronze Age, here we go, a little bit earlier than Rathlin, and I will be doing a full video on the Irish matches. So I'll take this one from Germany. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. And finally, from the Iron Age, I'll take this one from the Volga steppes. So that's 5. Now, you may be wondering why I got you to copy maybe 20 matches over. If you don't get a decent list, you may not find anything in the Bronze Age or the Iron Age. If you actually do find that you're not getting a match in the Bronze Age and the Iron Age, just put your centimorgan threshold down a notch and have another go. Now I will hit submit. ChatGPT went and searched the web for these details. And notice how it's also giving me citations. So I'm confident in the information that I'm receiving here. I do notice I don't have any citations for this particular specimen. If I go up to the Turkey find it is finding specific information about the actual archaeological site. It hasn't found citations for this particular sample, but what it's doing is it's giving me concrete information about that particular time in Central Europe. And just reading through it, I think that's very reasonable. Then with the one from the Volga Steppes, this time it has actually found information. Again, I'm satisfied. It does offer to pull more site-specific bibliographic references, but in my case, I'm not so interested in the archaeology of the finds. If you are, then guide the research to your interests, but this information suits me. Now, feel free to read this material in depth and ask ChatGPT for more, but that's not what I'm using ChatGPT for. And I want to use this information as a source in another tool, a learning tool, NotebookLM. This step is to go to NotebookLM. Let's just stick NotebookLM into Google here, and I'll go to the main page. So I'll click on this main page, and then I'll click on Try NotebookLM. You just need a Google account for the free version. So you come to this page here. What you want to do is you want to create a new notebook. So I'll just use this button up the top here, this Create New button. The first thing you see, it does pop up this Add Sources. I'm going to just close this. We will come back to this page, but I'm going to close it. With NotebookLM, you get 3-panel page. Over here on the left will be your sources, uploaded PDFs, documents, links to websites. Here, I'm not going to do anything here with this middle pane, and this is basically the chat. I'm going to ignore it completely for this exercise. And over here on the right is where you generate your audio podcast and the video overview. It's also where we start. Click the Add Note button. This opens up a scratchpad here. So this note is going to contain the research that I've generated using ChatGPT. I will call it my 5 archaic DNA matches, and then I'll swivel over to ChatGPT and I will literally copy and paste this research over. I'll just Control V here. Now I've created a note here. I want to include this note as a source to when I ask NotebookLM to go to work. Very simple. Down here at the bottom, I just click Convert to Source. And just keep an eye on the left-hand pane. Click the button and notice it goes over there. I now see it here. I want to add one more source, one that gives a context of the difference between DNA matching due to a shared recent ancestor to your second, third, fourth cousins versus the DNA matching here where the ancestry is back in the Paleolithic, Neolithic era. Some will be identical by chance and some will be identical by population. My first video was about exactly that, and I'm going to include it as a source. And I'll put the link into the prompt pack. I'll also put the link in the description below. Over here in the left panel, now that I've copied the link to the video, I'll click Add. And again, I'm down here under links, but this time I choose YouTube and I paste the URL. Insert, and there it is. So now for the magic that NotebookLM brings to learning about a specific topic. I'll minimize the note so I can see again. These boxes were grey because we hadn't added sources. Now that we have the sources, we can do stuff. Two things that I want to do is to generate a relatively short 6 to 7 minute video overview. It doesn't go longer than that. And then a longer, in-depth audio podcast that discusses my specific matches. The first thing I'll do is the video overview. Now don't click the box itself because it'll just shoot off and go and generate a video without any customization. Click the pencil here. That pops up a prompt window. We'll start from the top. I'm going to leave the format as explainer, which gives about a 6 or 7 minute video, which is effectively, it's a slideshow. Pick language of your choice. What's relatively recent is the visual style. I'll scroll across, and the natural one for me to choose is heritage, but you can play around with the others. So I'll select heritage there. And this is where we're going to enter our prompt. So I'll pull up my prompt pack. Here is the prompt for the video explainer. Let's step through this so you can make your own tweaks. The presenters are archaeogeneticists. What are those? Archaeogenetics is a combination of these disciplines. Present this to me, Margaret. The only details you probably have to change is your name. Next, I'm giving context to the AI tool. That's a summary of what this tutorial has been about up to now. Next paragraph, I'm explaining that the source document is my own matches. Here, I'm steering it to focusing on the matches I pick and not give generic information. So now I want to steer structure. The explainer videos are 6 to 7 minutes, so they can't go into great depth. I do want it to acknowledge that small segment matches may be identical by random chance, but I don't need a constant focus on that angle. Acknowledge it up front and then focus on taking me through the different prehistoric eras represented by these archaic matches. I will copy this and I will paste it here. And now I will click generate. And you see it appears here. It says generating video overview and it says this may take a while. And it really will may take a while. It can take 20 minutes. Meanwhile, I'll get moving on the audio overview, which will be more in depth. So again, click the little pencil icon and we get a more detailed prompt window here. You have 4 options here as the format. And for me, either the deep dive or the debate are the most appropriate. I'm going to pick the deep dive and then the default is about 20 minutes, longer is about 40 minutes. I'll stick with the default. I'll bring up my prompt pack, scroll down to the audio podcast. The way the podcast works is that there are 2 presenters. They spar off one another. One host is an archaeogeneticist who is passionate about comparing modern DNA to ancient samples due to the possibility of small matching segments being identical by population. The second host is a genealogist who is cautious about comparing modern DNA to ancient samples due to the possibility of small matching segments being identical by chance. Note the word cautious there. I've chosen the deep dive. If I chose the debate format, I change the words cautious to skeptical. But let's continue. Unlike the video explainer, the audio podcast really does behave as if it's a radio podcast. So we will give it not just an audience of one. We say the audience is a group of people who tested their DNA on sites like Ancestry and uploaded to the GEDmatch website. They used the archaic DNA matches tool on the GEDmatch website to compare the DNA to ancient specimens. They are curious about how to interpret their results. And now let's get personal. One member of the audience, Margaret, that's me, change that to your own name, has provided the results of small 1 to 2 centimorgan segment matches with a selection of specimens. Margaret's specific matches are described in the source document, my 5 archaic DNA matches. That's the note that you added with that specific title. There's one from each of the prehistoric time periods, and change this if you're missing a period. Just an intervention from Margaret from the future as the editor here. To make the podcast even better, I've added this paragraph here. Structure the podcast so that the first 4 minutes discuss identical by chance versus identical by population. The rest of the podcast should focus on what insights are gained if the matches are identical by population. I put that in because I found that with a 20-minute podcast, the first 10 minutes were on this particular discussion, but I went into this topic in depth in the first tutorial video in this video series. I don't need half of this generated podcast to cover that material. By restricting it to 4 minutes, and I found it kind of went on for about 5 minutes, what you get is 4 to 5 minutes of this background and then a solid 15 minutes discussion of your DNA matches across these vast time periods. Let's get back to it. Discuss what insights Margaret may take from her results. Consider each of Margaret's matches in the context of, and we've seen this before. This is what I asked ChatGPT to consider when producing the research descriptions. I will copy this, paste, and generate. And you can see the video overview is still motoring along, and the audio overview has just started. So I'm back sometime later. This is the completed video explainer. This is the audio podcast. I look at the explainer first. You can hit play here, and it opens up this tiny window. You can expand to full screen. You can see it's 7 minutes. That seems to be about the standard. And from here, you can download it as an MP4 to your local machine, or you can play it here. You'd be most interested in your results, but I'll give you a teaser on mine.
Margaret, we've been looking at your results from the archaic DNA matches tool.
There's the personalization. I like it. I'm going to show you snippets of presentation of each of my matches because I'm really interested if you get the same graphics. drop a comment and let me know.
So our first stop takes us deep into the Ice Age. For our next match, we're taking a massive leap forward in time, over 35,000 years. Your next match takes us to the dawn of agriculture in Anatolia, what's now Turkey. This next match places you right in the middle of a major cultural collision in Central Europe. For our final stop, we travel back out to those vast grasslands of the Eurasian steppe.
So that's the last of the snippets that I'll show you. And the graphics are really cool. There was a section in the middle where it got a bit strange. I'll show you. So in this section, it's illustrating the difference between identical by chance and identical by population. And at first, with the graphic on the left, I was wondering, why are there letters on the dice? And then I realised, oh, it's 3 of the 4 genetic codes, with T being the one that isn't shown. That's actually pretty clever. But I'm completely baffled by illustration on the other side of the screen that represents identical by population. We've got this modern human down here. We've got DNA. And then who is that up the tree? Is that Jesus? Or is it this guy from Assassin's Creed? Don't know. What I will say is that the narration is perfectly reasonable. It's just that this image has gone a bit awry. But it was really the only jarring graphic in the whole thing. I'll just close the window there, and now I'll take a look at the audio podcast. You can play it in the browser. Hit play. Just over 17 minutes. If you'd chosen to go for the longer version, it would be more like between 30 to 40 minutes, sometimes longer than that. I'll download it. It comes down as an M4A into my downloads folder. I'll play a 20-second clip from the introduction just to show that it's completely personalized.
Specifically, we're digging into results from our listener, Margaret.
Right. Margaret used the archaic DNA tool on GEDmatch, and she found these, well, tiny segment matches.
Her matches cover this incredible sweep of time: Paleolithic, Mesolithic, Neolithic, Bronze Age, and Iron Age. It's like a prehistoric roadmap.
It really is.
So that's the end of the second of our 4-part series on using NotebookLM with ChatGPT to work with your archaic DNA matches. The next video is going to be on the Neanderthals. Like this video if it was useful, and I'd be really interested, once you've had a go at this, it would be great if you could come back and leave a comment and tell me how you got on.